everyone's born with a hole in their
I
heart.
think you say everyone's born with a heart.
Everyone's born with a
Hopefully.
heart. You have a hole, but it closes up at like, I think 6 months or a year or something. Mine didn't close, which is super normal. Like, I
Okay.
think there's some crazy number of people walking around with like a hole in their heart.
Right.
They thought I had something called AFib. So they did this ablation. I had a couple of procedures, but it was always like something wasn't right. I remember just one day being like, my heart is racing and I can't tell why. You know, went to the doctor. They're like, this is not normal. Went to the hospital. They unfortunately misdiagnosed me and then gave me the wrong medication, which for my condition doesn't work. It actually has the opposite effect.
Oh,
It sped my, it was fun. It sped my heart up to like 250 beats per minute. So they immediately put me to sleep, use a defibrillator. Wasn't scary for me because I was asleep, but for my mum who was there and got kicked out of the room, and obviously Hugh, who was my husband, that would have been terrifying. And so I had a couple of procedures which just weren't right. Like they didn't fix the problem. And then in 2018 or 19, I was reading a book on my couch and all of a sudden I was like, can't see. Like I couldn't see this spot. And it wasn't like it was black. It wasn't like it was fuzzy. It was like just this spot of vision had almost like vacuumed in. It's like, this is really odd. And I thought I was getting a migraine because I've had migraines most of my life.
Right.
Went to an optometrist, see if it was like a visual thing. They sent me to an ophthalmologist and then they sat me down and they're like, well, you've actually had a TIA stroke. And I was like, okay. You know, you think of strokes and you're like, do I die now? Like, I don't know. Like strokes are full on.
Right.
But there are these mini strokes where, you know, I've had now 2 and one of them I didn't even know that I had had. Like it was somewhere in the back of my brain and I joke that it affected my function to do math. So I'm like, well, I had a mini stroke and I can't do math. Yeah, they did all these tests and then they found the hole, they closed it up. It was meant to heal my migraines, but it hasn't now, which is just inconvenient.
Well, I would think that would make you prioritize things, but at the end of the day, you're still human, is what I'm hearing. And so you have recently kind of shifted gears, and that's been so inspiring to watch. How did that come about? Did you wake up one day and go, there's more to life than this? What happened?
I got stuck. There was nothing really behind it except I just was in patterns that I wasn't allowing myself to get out of. I'm surrounded by great men. And it was interesting because in the space of like a month, there were 3 really pivotal conversations that happened. The one that stands out the most is my 2 best friends, and they were my neighbors. They went to Europe and they did this big Greece trip for their 40th. We were going to go, but we didn't because can't take the money, can't take the time out of my business. It just was too much. And I remember they got home and they were really jet lagged and I was sitting on the floor of their bedroom and they were telling me about the trip. And Eric, my friend, he looked at me and he said, you should have been there. It hurt because I knew I should have. And he said to me, you're not living up to your potential. I see you working long hours and so much, but you don't seem to be getting ahead. And he's like, I don't know why you're not doing more. And I was like, And then I had a similar conversation with another friend, Scott Harris, and then I had the same conversation with my dad. He was in hospital and he's like, you're so busy. And again, this word potential kept coming up. They're like, you've got so much potential. You're so good with social media. You're so good with branding. Why are you staying in the health space when it's clear your passion is over there? And I was like, okay.
Yeah, I'm hearing you.
Get it now. I hear the signs. Like it's okay, let's go. And so I was like, all right, what have I got to lose? And I know I'm good at what I do. I know what I'm doing. I know that I'm a great coach. And so I was like, all right, I'm just going to throw everything in. Let's go. And I'm so glad I did.
Right.
Like so
that
glad.
Stepping, that leap of faith. Like you had these signs clearly.
Yeah.
And you knew that this was for you.
Yeah.
But at some point you had to jump.
So dad was in hospital for a shoulder reconstruction, but he had a really bad year health-wise. And I think there's something really confronting when someone's in a very vulnerable situation. He's in hospital, he's in recovery for like a month in this place. And him saying that and almost feeling like I disappointed him a little bit.
Right.
He's always proud of me. He's like my biggest cheerleader. If you ever meet my dad, he'll make you follow me on Instagram. And I'm like, thanks, Dad. If he can see there's more in me, there probably is. And he actually just pushed me to take action. He was like, who could you get to help you? And in that moment, I literally texted a friend of mine who's a business coach. And I was like, I know what I need to do, but I probably just need someone by my side while I do it. And she was not cheap. And so dad was there while I was having this conversation with her. And he's like, I'm going to lend you some of the money, but you need to pay me back. And I was like, okay.
And why is that important?
because then you value it. You value it. And it was like, you know, the moment of pride when I gave him the last
Because I'm sure he could have
payment.
just given it to you, right?
Yes, probably.
Right. But at the same time, it's such a lesson.
Totally. And it was like, okay, if he's invested in me, you know, there's this belief. Also kind of announcing it to the world on social media, and not the world, but like, you know, at the time, like the 80,000 people that were following me back then, it's like, it feels really big, like really big. And I think I needed that accountability as well, because the amount of money he lent me, like I had tax debt. I was not doing well. I wasn't looking after money very well, but I also wasn't making as much as I needed to. I always knew I would pay it back, and I knew I would make it doing what I'm doing now, because I had so many signs, not only of the men in my life who said that, and Adam, my partner, was my biggest cheerleader, but also people just dropping into my DMs being like, can you teach me social media? And I was like, no, I work in health. I'm like, why did I say no to all those people?
Right?
Yeah.
You invested in a mentor. And I think this is probably the step that's missing for a lot of people. Firstly, because we have this underlying belief that maybe that's for someday, or maybe it's because we don't believe we can afford it. Now knowing what you know, what could you say to
Just go.
that version of Ange?
Hire the mentor, let's go.
Right?
Like,
But I think that's applicable for anything that you're trying to do.
100%.
I recently just had a day where I felt just horrible. It was a real pivotal point. I was like, I have to do something else.
Yeah.
I have people that are investing in me for their health. I know what to do. And it was the same with the socials, right? You knew what to do, but having that person that you've invested in, that you're now committed, and you're almost like, I have to actually make this work, is just so important.
100%.
Why don't we do it?
Fear,
right?
like all the things.
And it's not the first time, I'm sure, that you have invested in someone to help you. But now knowing that, I would imagine that in every area of your life where that shows up, you're like, right, who can help me? Right, who can help me?
Everywhere. Even last year, like I had one of those moments of like, okay, I've let my health slip. I was like, I'm probably like 5 to 7 kilos heavier than I feel really comfortable at. I've got bad habits, doing a little bit of reformer Pilates at home and calling it working out and going for a walk twice a week. And again, I know what to do. I know to lift weights. I know what I should be eating. I know I should have minimum 100 grams of protein every day. Like, I know, but I still went immediately and invested in someone who was going to hold me to account, who was going to write out the programs, who knew more than I did. There's no better feeling than knowing that you've put money and you've backed yourself. Nothing really matters if you don't invest. If I'm like, okay, I'm going to get healthy or I'm going to start my business, but if I don't do it, nothing really happens. Whereas if I've invested, to me, it's like I'm backing myself.
I think the other thing about this is interesting because it depends on what it is, right? I think in some instances, like you going out and telling the world, right, I'm rebranding, I'm doing all of this, like that held you accountable. But then there's also sometimes where I think we don't need to tell and we just need to go and do and then tell later.
Yes. 100%.
And that's 2 examples of that. You know, we don't need to tell someone I'm going on this new health journey, although it might keep you accountable. Maybe that's a bad example, but there are definitely instances where I think I'm going to go and I'm going to smash this and I'm not telling anyone because I don't need anyone telling me why it won't work.
It depends on your personality type as well. Do you need external accountability? Are you internally driven? I need external accountability. Like I thrive with it. Whereas I'm like, I have friends in my life and I'm like, wait, you just said you were going to do something and then you did it. And you do that every time.
Yes. Yes. It is fascinating. But I do sit there and think, you know, there are some things where I just do and I don't tell anyone until after I've done it because I just don't want anyone standing in my way. And there are other times where I absolutely will want someone to keep me accountable.
Yeah.
So it's hard to know when one applies and when one doesn't it?
Yeah. We're all so different and circumstances are different.